Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by editor of the Wolfpacker.com and fellow co-host Matt Carter. I am back on the West Coast, back from my Raleigh homecoming, and boy, was it sweet. Scored some tickets for the game on Sunday, NC State UNC, and as I told Matt when he asked about how my trip was, I said the tickets were worth every penny and more. We're going to get into, just reliving that great Sunday game against the Tar Heels, potentially sending one of the final nails in the coffin for UNC to maybe send them to the NIT. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out. Plus, we've got another great game from this week, NC State Wake Forest. Fun game on Wednesday night. The 83 team was honored at halftime. We'll talk about that. Plus, 2 games left in the regular season for the Wolfpack men. We'll discuss what we think of those upcoming matchups, where NC State is positioned going into the ACC tournament, NCAA tournament talk. I know Matt can't wait to talk about the net rankings. So maybe a little net rankings conversation, and if there's time, we'll also talk some women's hoops as they continue to make their way towards the conference tournament, which is coming up next week. So before we get into all that good stuff, quick reminders for the listeners and viewers at home. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. Apple, Spotify, Google Play. We're there. Plus, you can always watch us on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have the chance, if you haven't done so already. I think we're very, very close to 2,000 subscribers. I can remember when we had less than 100. So thank you guys very much for smashing that subscribe button. You guys have been great getting us to close to 2,000 subscribers. But if you haven't done so already, you're a loyal listener of the podcast. That would help us out tremendously. Even if you don't use YouTube, you probably have a Google account. So just head over to the Wolfpacker YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. That'll help us out a ton. If you're watching us on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment while you're at it. It helps us with engagement so that we can be shown to other Wolfpack fans out there. And head over to the Wolfpacker.com right now. Special deal going on for $29.99. You can get premium subscription to the Wolfpacker.com as part of the On3 network through the beginning of college football season. So that's basically 6 months of premium subscription. It's going to take you to the end of August 2023. $29.99. Typically, it's about $10 a month. So that's about a 50% discount right now if you take advantage of it right now. Still a solid deal. As we talked about on the last time I was on the podcast, parking isn't cheap to go to PNC Arena. I see that NC State Clemson is a sellout on Saturday, so there's probably plenty of you that'll be going to PNC Arena to watch senior night, and we'll need maybe some funds for parking. Here's your opportunity. You can save $30 by joining the Wolfpacker.com right now, taking advantage of that deal, and then there you go. Basically, parking is free. So that's your excuse. And last but certainly not least, head over to rogueshop.com. That's ROGUE shop.com for your premium cannabis, CBD, Delta 8, and Delta 9 goods. They have all kinds of great cannabis products, whether it's cannabis itself, oils, tinctures, cartridges for discreet use, edibles, lotions. There's all kinds of mediums to enjoy the natural remedies of cannabis. Great for dealing with symptoms such as trouble sleeping at night, chronic pain and inflammation, even just general stress and anxiety. I know all of us out there, deal with one, if not more of those things on a day-to-day basis. And this is a great natural way to help with some of those things. Cannabis, CBD, Delta 8, Delta 9, founded by a husband and wife. The husband is a disabled veteran that dealt with some of those issues. Once he was introduced to these natural products, it changed his life for the better, so much so that he wanted to start this company, make it a livelihood, and proud sponsor of the Wolfpacker.com, the Wolfpacker podcast. They're also on the message boards. So if you have any questions about these products, or you're just curious about, what might best fit your symptoms, or just general interest in their products, reach out to them on the message boards. If you're not on the message boards, you can also use their chat feature on rogueshop.com. You'll be talking to a real life human being. So Head over there now. They've got great products. Rogueshop.com, ROGUE shop.com, and support us by supporting them. All right, Matt. I think we got to go back to Sunday. I texted you about 10 minutes before tip-off. I said, look to your 4 o'clock. You were looking at your 12 o'clock at first. I think maybe the excitement of the game was...
Wait a second here. So in my book, 12 o'clock is straight ahead. So 4 o'clock would be like, 6 o'clock is behind me, right?
Yeah, so 4 o'clock is like kind of behind you, but also kind of to your right.
You're right. I was looking more like 2 o'clock.
Now, I will give you a defense. It looked like you were in between two UNC beat writers there on the baseline, so you might have been distracted in some, back and forth. I won't name particular names. I'm sure they're both kind young gentlemen, but it was an electric environment, and you were able to wave at me. I was able to wave back. I flashed up my Wolf sign for you, and then the next 2 hours were great. A little bit uncomfortable there for the first maybe hour and 15 minutes. But when you got to the 6-minute mark in the second half, it was a tie game with 6 minutes to go. And that's when Jarkel Joyner etched his name in NC State history, went on an unbelievable tear. NC State goes on a 7-0 run, takes care of business from there. And with less than 2 minutes to go, there was never a doubt that NC State was going to win that game. As the home crowd started chanting NIT, NIT, NIT towards the light blue Carolina blue bench.
So I'm going to repeat what I've said before, and it won't be popular. NC State fans don't want that to happen. You want North Carolina to do well. You want North Carolina to get into the NCAA tournament picture, because I think NC State's in a very safe position for the NCAA tournament. But it's not a lock. There's 2 games left. And one of the reasons why it's not a lock, they probably have played some of the fewest amount of quad 1, quad 2 games of any Power 5 team in the country. And that's basically being a byproduct of the ACC, by the way. ACC lack of quality hurts, in that regard. And so it'd be nice if you get more NCAA tournament teams in the picture, because NC State's beating all of these teams. But you didn't beat Virginia and you didn't beat Pittsburgh. You only got them once. So the only 2 teams you can say right now that you beat that are in the NCAA tournament are Miami and Duke. So,
well, you've got UNC and Clemson on the first 4 out. The last time I checked, you've got another game against Clemson.
Yep.
Got another game against Duke. But frankly, Matt, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
But is NC State not a lock at this point?
Let me give you a hypothetical.
If they lose out.
No, let me say, if they lose out, let's say this. Okay, here, let me run a hypothetical for you. They lose the last 2 games of the regular season to Clemson and Duke. And then Duke, let's say Duke loses this weekend. Before they play NC State, Duke, hosting Virginia Tech, gets killed by 20 points. Let's say on Saturday, Miami gets upset at home by Florida State. All of a sudden, your 3 quad 1 wins could just like that be won in the blink of an eye. So, and that's the problem. All their NC State quad 1 wins are like really borderline.
I thought this was a positive vibes only. I came into this podcast hot. I came in ready to recap my wonderful experience in Raleigh this past weekend, and then you're coming in here talking about, well, what if Duke loses by 20 to the Fighting Mike Youngs? Listen. I guess if that happens, Matt, it might be a little bit uncomfortable on Selection Sunday.
Just saying.
The odds of these things happening are very, very low. NC State has been fantastic at home on senior night, which might as well also be Terquavion Smith night, because I don't think there's any way in heck that Terquavion Smith is coming back next year. He will be going to the NBA draft. Might as well be a celebration for him. I've got a feeling Baby T has one more special game ready to go on what could be and what probably will be his last game at PNC Arena wearing the red and white. But yeah, NC State has lost, one game at home this year?
Yeah, and you know what? The weird thing about this team is they handle the prosperity well. They handle success well. And it's like you and I are probably trained to wait for that other shoe to drop. And that's probably why I freak out more about NCAA tournament chances than most people. Mm-hmm. Because I know that 2 weeks is an eternity in college basketball. But yeah, you're right. I mean, and Terquavion Smith has never played well against Clemson. That's like one of those teams that has had his number through his career. So he's probably itching on Saturday in what could very well be his last game at PNC Arena to get one on the team that has had his number a little bit over his career.
And it's totally normal for NC State fans to have that uneasy feeling of, okay, well, you just beat UNC. Now here comes a hungry Wake Forest team to PNC Arena. You know what's going to happen. There's going to be a hangover.
Yeah.
And guess what? The recipe was right there. Wake Forest comes out, makes their first 6 or 7 shots. I think they were shooting like 75, 80% in the first half. That was a offensive clinic that Wake Forest put on.
Yeah.
But NC State went toe-to-toe with them the whole way.
Sorry about that.
No, all good. I don't even know what you're referring to. But what I'm saying is NC State matched that energy. They didn't flinch, and they did what they had to do in the first half to match the offensive explosiveness. Went to halftime with a lead, and then got the defense right in the second half. Were able to make enough shots in the second half to, win that game comfortably. The game was, I think it was 25-20, 25-22. Wake Forest had a slight lead with maybe 8 minutes to go in the first half. I'd just gotten back from my flight, looked over to my girlfriend and said, there's no way NC State is winning this game. I'm going to watch the rest, but this has Wake Forest win written all over it. And I should have known better, because the last time NC State played Wake Forest in Winston-Salem, I think that was the moment where I learned that this team is different. This is not this is not just another NC State team. This team has a special chemistry about it, a special confidence about it, that it just doesn't fall into the same tropes that I feel like NC State basketball teams in the past 20, 25 years have always seemed to do.
Yeah. That is 100% the main takeaway I've had so far this year. They beat, and it really took Kevin Keatts' credit. I think Kevin Keatts deserves some credit. He's now 5-1 in games after beating UNC or Duke at NC State. And look, this year's team, you beat Duke on January 4th. Your next game is at Virginia Tech, who at that point had lost 3 or 4 games in a row. I remember our co-worker Ethan McDowell went up to Blacksburg, Virginia to cover the game, and this is a must-win for Virginia Tech. And what did NC State do? They beat Virginia Tech on the road for one of those 3 quad 1 wins I'm talking about. And then, after the Carolina game, you come back and you beat Wake, and they were just clearly a better team. That, when you watch the second half, it's just like, it's just a better team than Wake. That's just the bottom line. They're just a better team than Wake. Like, Wake has to play lights out to hang with NC State at home. They had to make 12 or 13 shots and 4 or 5 threes to have a 2-point lead over NC State at home. That's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And for one, NC State, when they played in my Winston-Salem, you're right. NC State was the team you have to play 40 minutes against. Usually the other way around, right? We're talking about how NC State was right there, played great for 25, 30 minutes, but they couldn't play a 40-minute game. Wake Forest was the one that played great for 30 minutes. The trademark train comes by the office like clockwork.
I think the UNC game taught. How many times has NC State come out strong in the first half, only for UNC to go to the locker room, reset, come back out in the second half? UNC had what, about a 5? What was the largest lead that UNC
6.
had? 6
They were up by
points.
6 with about
under 10 minutes to go.
Yeah.
And NC State was the team that, hit the gas at the right moments and was just the poised team. Was what you would, if you asked me which of these teams made a run to the national championship last year and had basically all of their returning cast come back, it wouldn't have been Carolina based on the way they handled that game. And I don't think Carolina is a bad team. I think
that's the point I keep making. When people say they're a bad team, I'm like, then what did that say for NC State's performance? Because
no,
you were there. They were a tied game with 6 minutes to go.
They are a good team, but here's the fodder that NC State fans can enjoy and tell all of their UNC friends. They are an extremely talented team. UNC probably has the most talent in the ACC. They're just not executing. They're just crumbling under pressure. They just have bad chemistry. They just look like they don't want to be out there at times.
Yeah.
And if that's your arch nemesis, you just love to see it because, if you've got everything within your power to, be the number one team in the country and you simply can't even make your way to the NCAA tournament, I think that's where it feels like finally, after many, many years, for one season, the tides have turned and the narrative has flipped. And now NC State is the team that has the power and is the team that you don't want to have to face.
Shoes on the other foot for once. And that's, you're right. I mean, I think what I like about this NC State team is I'm not so sure they don't have the best starting 5, complementary starting 5 in the ACC. I think it's very close between them and Miami. And Pittsburgh has a nice starting 5 too.
That brings up an important point, Matt. Maybe you can give me some insider intel here.
Yeah.
That means Jack Clark is in that starting 5. How's he doing?
I don't, look, I'm trying to think the best way to put this. I don't think this is something where we're not seeing Jack Clark for the rest of the year. I'll put it that way.
Okay. It was a very startling moment when you see him hit the floor. But then when you watch the replay, you're like, oh, thank goodness he didn't. It looked like he went head first on the ground at first.
Yeah. I joked with somebody. The swing they had his arm in would look like something you could have gotten at a CVS. If you hurt at one of those home remedy situations, there was no. My point being, there was no structural support system for the shoulder or the arm. I mean, there was no tape, there's no brace, there's no cast. It was just one of those simple slings, that you see people have all the time. So I guess that was very precautionary in that moment. But
you didn't need him. You didn't need him to win that game.
No, the way the game was playing out, look, I'll add. I mean, they played. They got injured in the Clemson game, and they went 1-0, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. What did they went like 8-2 without him. So technically he's not a starter, by the way. Greg Gant still started him for NC State. But your point is taken. He's playing the most minutes. And
NC State's best lineup is Morcell, Joyner, Smith, Burns, and Clark.
Yeah. I think it would really help State if Mahorcic could come back. I don't know what that status is. Not for starting purposes, but for depth purposes. But I do think NC State has the most, and what I mean by complementary is the pieces fit very well. Yeah, you fit very well with each other. And that's what happened to UNC last year, by the way. They figured out a starting 5. It fit very well together. And they all were playing peak form. Georgia Tech, the year they won the ACC championship. That was an outstanding starting 5 that they had. And they were all like in their 19th year of college basketball at that point. And who was the young man from Raleigh that was so good, ended up being ACC? Moses Wright.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he was there at Georgia Tech so long that he became a really good player. I mean, if you saw him as a freshman, you never thought that was coming.
And ACC fans knew all too well that Grand Theft Alvarado was going to be a pest at the very least in the NBA. He's made a nice little career for himself down in New Orleans.
Yeah, and so it is weird to see the shoe on the other foot for once, where NC State is the team you have to play 40 minutes against, and so let's see if they can close it out. They've given you every reason to believe this team is different, that they'll be fine, and got nothing to worry about. That they have not lost back-to-back games all year, by the way. Something I'm not sure has happened in a long time at NC State. But there's also a reason why they're primarily on that 8-9 line in the NCAA tournament, which is if you lose 2 games in a row and then lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament, you dropping a couple C lines there? And if you drop a couple C lines, where are you?
Well, you're back on the bubble.
Yeah.
But again, look, Matt, if you want to be the Grim Reaper here, I know you're the guy that has to deal with the message boards if the worst case scenario happens. So I completely get it. That was my cue that when this podcast is over, I got to go flip my laundry. But no rush, because we're having a good time talking Wolfpack basketball here. I just don't see any. I would consider NC State a lock for the NCAA. When I consider a team a lock, I think if they lose out, will they still be in? And certainly we would not like to see NC State finish the year on a 3-game losing streak. And that would include a bad loss to a, likely a 12, 13, 14, 15 seed in the ACC tournament on Wednesday. But that said, I still think if they lost all 3 of those games, I mean, Matt, it would take the type of crazy conspiracy theory, worst case scenario. Not only does NC State lose the next 3 games, but the teams they lose to also lose the rest of their games, and every bad net outcome that could happen does. I just don't see it. I also have seen some 7 seeds, Matt, and if you're talking about NCAA tournament seeding, I think a 7 to 10 seed, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's a great recipe for this team, because like you said, this starting 5 can match up with any team in the country. There are no juggernauts in college basketball this year. There might be.
I don't think there will be juggernauts in college basketball for a while, to be honest with you. I'm not sure we've had a juggernaut in college basketball in probably 10 years.
And you know what? That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we already have the best sporting event, the best postseason event in all of sports in the NCAA tournament because of the parity of the first 2 weekends. Well, now extend that through the entire tournament. That's what you're going to get. The UNC making it to the Final Four as a 8 seed last year. I think there's a lot more of that to come. And when you look at potential 8, 9 seeds that could make a run like that, I think NC State definitely has to be on that list of, let's say they get a Kansas in the they wouldn't get Kansas probably in the second round because they played them in the regular season. But I mean, NC State played Kansas as strong as anybody in the Big 12 has all season, in Maui earlier or not Maui, the Bahamas. But I think this team could go toe to toe with the 1 seed, upset them, get into the Sweet 16, and then, it's anybody's ball game from that point.
Eyeball test, you're absolutely right. I think NC State clearly is one of the very, very best teams. I think NC State myself is a top 20 team in the country. Myself, that's it. I hands up. I've not watched I'm not watching the Big 12 every night. I get that the Big 12 has unbelievable hype, and 5 and 10 in the conference. West Virginia might even be seeded ahead of NC State for all I know in the tournament. But you know who else doesn't watch every game in college basketball? That selection committee. And they're going by data, and that's probably why we're talking about 7 to 10 line, and the data just doesn't give a lot of help to NC State. And that's not their fault. That's a lot of it byproduct of having whatever that basketball team in Louisville is called. And the falling apart of Florida State and Notre Dame this year, and BC having a bad injury luck early in the year because they're a good team. I actually think Boston College is a good team. They were just missing a couple of really important players that if they had them all year long, they're probably 100 spots higher in the net. And Georgia Tech just completely went cold in January. And I told Matt Kerr that Georgia Tech's the team you do not want to see if you're NC State in the ACC tournament.
No.
By the way. So,
no.
And that's quite possibly how it's setting up. That's why a double bye would be nice. Beat Clemson, you get yourself in position for a double bye, and then Clemson would have to probably take care of Georgia Tech in that first game. So
huge opportunity. I mean, going into this ACC tournament, it's been a long time since you've been able to look at the bracket, go up and down the bracket, and say, I like NC State's chances here. I might put a little future on them for the ACC tournament just because there are bad Matt. Let's talk about this, Matt. Other than Georgia Tech, that would be the double-digit seed you don't want to see. I got two more that you'd ideally not want to see. I think Miami is just as good as NC State.
They are. I think they're probably the best team in the ACC.
But I think NC State's going to play a competitive game against Miami. It's going to be a close game.
I think what's funny is I think Miami's the best team in the ACC, and I think NC State matches up the best with Miami of the teams in the ACC.
The other team you don't want to face is UNC.
Yeah, they do match. The thing is, they actually match up fairly decent against NC State, which is why the game was competitive.
Yeah.
In Raleigh. And you know why you would want a double bye too, by the way? It eliminates a bad loss.
This is true. Well, it also means that
in all likelihood,
if you make it to Saturday, DJ Burns is playing his third game in 3 days, not his fourth game in 4 days, and without knowing whether or not Mahorcic is going to be back by that point, you really need it to be the third game in 3 days.
Yeah, and also, by the way, if you're getting a double bye, then you finish the regular season just fine and dandy. And I do believe this, by the way. Talk to me on Sunday. If they had beaten Clemson, I probably would say it's a lock now.
Oh, yeah.
I think they're one win away from putting a bow, locking it up, and we're just talking about where they're going to be seated. Barring Miami and Duke stubbing their toe and Virginia Tech losing out, and that could theoretically be a quad one that goes away too. But barring those scenarios, I kind of feel like one win will do the trick.
Well, it's not going to be easy because Clemson needs this game way more than NC State does.
They do. They're the weirdest resume. They look fine on the top end.
The team that I'd love to see NC State play, maybe the semifinals, and if they get that double bye or if they get the 5 seed, it'll probably match up that way. I want to see NC State play Virginia again. I think that NC State had probably its worst performance in the ACC schedule up in Charlottesville. And
out of Clemson. Ironically, we're talking about Clemson. The performance down in Clemson was pretty rough too.
Well, I mean, it's a simple game. As Sidney Lowe, Sidney Lowe is in the house on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. He'll be the first to tell you it's a make or miss game. And that was the case up in Charlottesville. It's not that NC State, it's not that every shot was contested. They just didn't hit the open ones.
Nope.
And Jarkel Joyner had a really, really rough game that game. How has he been since?
Pretty phenomenal.
Something tells me that if he sees the Cavaliers one more time, that was his first time playing Virginia.
What was weird about that Virginia game is I felt like it got into State's heads a little bit. This is Virginia defense. Yeah, and it just felt like they were rushing shots. Like they were good looks and they were rushing to get them up rather than just take their time and shoot a nice shot on a good look. Because you're right, I felt like they had plenty of good looks. They felt like they were panicking. Oh my goodness, I'm open. I got to shoot it. I got to shoot it in a hurry. Just take your time and shoot your normal shot. And
needed Casey Morsell to talk to guys. I mean, come on. I left this program, nothing to be scared about, guys.
But actually, if the seedings hold it current, it would probably be Miami in the semifinals, because Miami has leaked past Virginia after Virginia had. By the way, since that NC State game where I felt like they were very surgical in that game, very precise, they've looked terrible.
In Virginia?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. They put on an offensive clinic.
And then against Louisville, they had to dodge a shot at the end of the game that could have forced overtime. Then Notre Dame had a shot to win it. And then they did lose at Boston College. So they have not played well.
Yeah, I would guess that they'll probably lose in Chapel Hill this weekend.
Might not be a bad thing for NC State, by the way. I go back to what I said earlier.
The only way I could here if there's a way that maybe UNC beats Virginia, they lose to Duke, they go to the ACC tournament needing another quad one win to get in, and then maybe NC State hands them one more nail in the coffin. I don't know. I personally would rather see NC State not have to play UNC in Greensboro. I'm cool with the season split. Let's take it. Move on. Miami, come on. Duke, come on. Virginia, come on. I've seen this tale too many times to know that if NC State has the this much bragging rights over UNC for like this, something's coming. Something's coming. It's too good to be true. Let's talk about the weekend. I mean, you start with a Thursday, the collapse by the UNC women in Reynolds Coliseum for NC State to come back, win that game in overtime. The wrestling, personally didn't watch it, but I know a lot of people out there did, and apparently it was a butt whooping after the UNC wrestler beheaded the NC State Wolf, I guess. From that point on, I heard UNC didn't get another point.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of points before then either. They won State won 8 out of 10 bouts. That's even with holding a couple guys back.
As we've talked about this entire podcast, Sunday, NC State wins in PNC Arena, and then they go across the street. The Ice Pack takes care of business in Carter Finley Stadium. So, in terms of domination over UNC, that might be an all-timer week. I mean, no doubt about it. That is an all-timer weekend.
Yeah,
I'm sure you can read about it in the upcoming Wolfpacker magazine that'll be hitting mailboxes here soon.
It was an epic weekend. I'm really happy for the women too, because it's been a tough year for them. Wes Moore said, we created a monster, and so a team that beat Iowa on the road, beat Notre Dame at home, beat Louisville on the road, beat North Carolina at home. I mean, it's a nice list of accomplishments for that team, and but they're also going to be in that 8-9 game in the ACC tournament, and they consider it a big disappointment.
When he says created a monster, does he mean the schedule, or does he mean
expectations? Like just expectations of you win 3 straight ACC tournament titles, you're a number 1 seed the last 2 years, and so expectations are you're going to be a top. I think there was a thought that NC State turned the corner to be a perennial top 10 team, and it just hasn't gone that way this year.
Well, Elisa Cunanes don't grow on trees, I mean, you lose one of your best players in program history, you lose a slew of senior members in your backcourt. There's going to be some growing pains. I would anticipate NC State will be right back where the standards have been set for the program in the seasons to come. They're one of those programs that can restock and reload within the transfer portal every year and with recruiting and everything. But the ACC keeps getting better and better. And, when you lose that much talent after a season like last year, it's a reasonable expectation to maybe see some growing pains this year. And if the growing pains year means that you're going to win those games like you already listed, Matt, have that list of accomplishments and still be a lock for the NCAA tournament. And who knows what they do in Greensboro. They've obviously had a great track record of playing great in Greensboro the past few seasons. So,
yeah, and I think the big difference for this team is that they've lost games they shouldn't in the women's side, and that's what made it hard, which is why it was nice for them to have that moment in Reynolds Coliseum in front of a sold-out crowd, a small stadium, big wins. I think with the T-shirt that were being printed out for Courtney Bainhart's arrival at Reynolds Coliseum. Yeah, it's strange about this team is that you look at the bottom 4 teams and they've lost to 3 out of 4 of the bottom 4 teams in the ACC this year. And if you just win those games, you're 11-6 right now instead of 8-9 in the conference. Now you got last place Pittsburgh coming to Reynolds. So hopefully you take care of business there and that you finish 9-9 in the ACC. So, but it was nice for them in particular. The wrestling you expected, the men's, it was exciting. It was as loud as I've heard PNC. But there was also a little bit of relief. Again, I think that you actually pulled that out. Ice Pack was just cool. But I might have been happiest for the women's team to have that moment in a year like what they've kind of been up and down.
I was happiest for the men. I was happiest for the fans at the men's game. I was happy for what an environment. It felt good to have a college basketball environment that felt pre-pandemic. Yeah, I don't know about you, Matt, but I thought that first half Sunday NC State UNC men's game, I thought the first half maybe there was a little hangover. Probably a lot of the fans there went to that Stadium Series game, probably late night for many folks there. Wasn't as intense maybe as I thought in the first half, but when that run happened in the second half, it's as loud as I've ever heard it.
I've heard that before. I also heard that. Maybe that was my vantage point, and I'm sitting in front of the band, so it's always loud to me.
Yeah.
But I think it was just a matter of it just wasn't any explosiveness to that first half. I kind of feel like that's how a lot of those games start out. It's in a buildup of intensity that reaches a crescendo with 6-7 minutes to go. So maybe I have a different perspective. I definitely have heard that a lot of people didn't feel like it was. There was it was maybe sleepy. I thought it was loud. It just wasn't an explosive.
Well, there weren't any like you said, there weren't any flurries. Like that's kind of how the crowd gets going is when you go on a run, and it would be a nice shot here and there, and then UNC would respond, and then whenever before that last final run, it felt like every time NC State had momentum, UNC would go down, they'd stop UNC, and then UNC would get 2 or 3 offensive rebounds and still be able to execute points. And that was a concern. That's kind of why you don't want to see UNC in Greensboro. Is just UNC is going to be able to exploit the boards, exploit the offensive rebounds. But credit to NC State for what they finished that game with 1 turnover. 2?
Really, 3 technically, but 1. They had 1 turnover, and then Ernest Ross blew the dunk and tried to. I don't know what he was trying to do, to be honest with you, but that was not. You can't hang on the rim and try to put back your own missed dunk. And then there was a jump ball situation on an inbound pass with like 30 seconds to go. There was a 3rd turnover. That's actually one of the quiet strengths of this team. For a lot of the criticism that Kevin Keats has received, I should say, about his offense, they don't turn the ball over. I think a lot of people say, oh, it's just, AAU basketball, it's just pickup basketball, whatever. Hey, I would kind of dispute that. I think that's the way every team plays college basketball now. It's the same offense Miami runs with Jim Larinaga, basically. But 2, they take care of the basketball. That was the difference against Wake Forest. Turnover margins and points off turnovers. And I think it was Notre Dame maybe where they had 1 turnover all game or 2 turnovers all game.
Yeah, if you look at the statistical outliers of this team, that is the one that jumps off the page. Is NC State is nationally elite when it comes to turnover rate on offense, and obviously they're an above average team at creating turnovers on the other end, on the defensive end. So, I mean, simple game. Win the turnover margin, you're going to create more opportunities for yourself to make more baskets. And That's what this team's been doing. Let's see if they can keep doing it for another 2 games in the regular season. Take that to Greensboro and then see where the selection committee sends them. But
let me do it real quick. I just want people to understand the net a little better. So I'm going to give you a 2-minute dumbed down version of it.
Nobody tune out. Nobody tune out. Just
no, because this first thing I'm going to tell you is going to save you a lot of headaches. It doesn't matter where NC State's ranked. So do not pay attention to where NC State is ranked. Everybody, it's where your opponents are ranked that makes what matters. All the NCAA is doing with the net is putting a value on a game. They're putting a value on the team you play and where you play them based on how that team has performed throughout the year against who they have played and where they have played them. And that's all it is. And so they're saying that if you play Florida International at home, you should win that game. It's just a quad 4 game. But if you play Virginia Tech on the road, they're not an NCAA tournament team unless they win the ACC tournament, right? But based on how Virginia Tech has done and how they have played, particularly at home, there's a lot of value in winning that game. It's a quad 1 game. That's a valuable win to have. And that's all it is. That's the net in a nutshell. And so it's all about where your opponents are ranked, which is what has kind of hurt NC State this year because the ACC has been so far down. So they haven't gotten a lot of quality value from the games they played in the ACC. So didn't even take 2 minutes, people. You didn't have to tune out. But hopefully you learned a lot more about the net there.
Every statistical model is going to have its strengths and its weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's better than the RPI. Is net perfect? Absolutely not. Would you rather see KenPom be used as the metric? I don't know. I mean, then you're going off of, rather than wins and losses, you're going off of a team's potential. And is that fair? Because it's kind of skewed because there's preseason rankings involved.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't. It's funny. Somebody on Twitter compared Pittsburgh and Liberty and was like, how the heck is Liberty higher in the net? And it goes back to you're making mistake number 1. Doesn't matter. What mattered was with the other information that was included in that tweet, which was the record against quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, away from home, yada, yada, yada. Number 2, if you go to KenPom, the difference between the two is actually greater. Liberty was even higher and Pittsburgh was even lower because those metrics that included do reward efficiency. They award how you play in a game. And Steve Forbes was like, can't believe, Wake Forest coach who I love. Great interview, by the way, on YouTube.com as his post-game press conference after NC State beat Wake Forest. He couldn't believe that they beat Georgia Tech and went down some spots and Georgia Tech went up. Well, this is how it happened. You were net like 70 at the time. Georgia Tech was like net 225. You're playing them in Winston-Salem. Georgia Tech led for a lot of that basketball game. Georgia Tech led until you made 2 free throws with 10 seconds left at the end of the game to win by 1. Of course you're going to go down. And of course Georgia Tech's going to go up. You're about 150 spots higher in the net than them, playing them on your home court. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That's like saying, oh, Georgia Tech played better than their net ranking, and you didn't play as well as your net ranking. So I kind of like that it's not all about wins and losses. It's about a little bit of factored in on how you actually play against who you actually play.
I think the one thing that could make the net make a little more sense, why do the games are weighed the same at the first week of November as they are in the last week of February.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt, you've been doing this for a long time. You tell me which week is more important in college basketball.
I do like to think I think the committee made a mistake when they did away with the last 10 games of the year metric. I thought that was a mistake. Nobody knows the formula with the net, but I believe it's a dynamic rating in the sense of that first game, whatever you did that first game, your value, your performance, your grade or whatever, they change based on, like, for instance, North Carolina beat Ohio State. That was a big win for them in December, right?
Yep.
Well, Ohio State stinks. So I think the value that North Carolina got from that win in December probably is not the same value in the net now that they get. And I see that, and I mentioned that because I've seen NC State go up 2 or 3 spots when there's nobody around them played a game, and NC State didn't play a game. But it was a Friday night, and Dayton beat some team on the road by 20 points, and Dayton bumped up in the net by like 5 or 6 spots. And consequently, NC State got rewarded. That win over Dayton in November looked a little bit better, so they get a little bit of a bump based on that. So I do think that is somewhat accounted for in the metric.
Yeah, it just seems that, everybody's talking about the ACC having a down year, and is it a vintage ACC season? Absolutely not. And it doesn't help that Duke and UNC are both unranked, one of which is struggling to make the NCAA tournament. The other is sure not a lock at this point, but is probably trending towards making the NCAA tournament.
But I got a 7 seed or something in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, Duke's comparable resume to NC State based on the seeding that I've seen, even though I think NC State's the better team. But Duke is also Duke is another example of Duke is a better team now than it was in November because it has a lot of freshmen. NC State probably hasn't had that same level of NC State hasn't had that same amount of growth from the beginning of the season because it's an old, experienced team. Yeah. So it kind of comes down to roster makeup and, did the ACC struggle in out-of-conference play? Yes, that's why the metrics are skewed. But it's not going to shock me at all to see, 5, 6, I don't know how many ACC teams are going to make the NCAA tournament. But whoever does, it's not going to surprise me to see a majority of them end up in the second weekend. And then everyone's going to say, oh, wow, where did this come from? It's the same thing that happened last year. It's the same thing that happened last year. And guess what? 2 ACC teams were in the Final Four. 3 of them were in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, actually, the team that lost in the Elite Eight had a pretty sizable halftime lead over the national champion Kansas. We're talking about Miami. They had a nice lead on Kansas in the Elite Eight at halftime, and it would have been 3 ACC teams in the Final Four. And
you cannot tell me the Big Ten is a better conference.
ACC went 13-12 against the Big Ten this year,
and won the Big Ten Challenge.
And some of it too, what you said earlier, that Matt Coe kind of hopped on this. National media doesn't know what to do when the best teams in the ACC are not Duke and Carolina.
Right.
And I think you can make a case, for instance, Miami made the Elite Eight last year, returned quite a bit of talent, and they went out and purchased themselves a couple good transfers. I'm just stating facts for the public record. It's out there, so I can say that. If that was Carolina or Duke with that resume coming back, they would have been preseason top 10. I don't think Miami was even preseason ranked. If Carolina or Duke were Miami from last year coming back this year and playing like Miami this year, they're probably top 5 in the country right now. And Miami's not even top 10. So I think there is an element of that at play right now too.
To me, Big 12 is without a doubt the best conference in the league. And then after that, there's good teams, there's bad teams in every conference. ACC is being dragged by the bottom of its conference right now. That's what happens when you have 15 teams in your league. There's going to be some bad eggs. You can't tell me that these SEC teams, how many of them are going to make it to the second weekend? Maybe 2. Yeah. Maybe 2. I think ACC has more contenders to make it to the second weekend, but all right. Well, we've dwelled enough on this podcast. We've talked net. We've talked rivalry talk. We've talked men's and women's hoops. So now it's time to
let you guys go watch some baseball.
Yep. Matt's going to go watch baseball. You guys are going to enjoy the game Saturday, noon tip-off, senior day, sellout crowd. Wolfpack fans, you got to make it a home crowd advantage, a big one. Think of it as a win and you're in type game. I think it's going to be an electric environment. Can't wait to watch it on TV. And we'll see what the Pack can do in Durham, the final game of the regular season. We'll be back for another episode probably after that to maybe set up some ACC tournament talk, maybe an ACC tournament preview. So for the good listeners and viewers at home, some quick reminders on your way out. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to us, Apple, Spotify, Google Play. You can also watch us on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give this video a thumbs up. Drop a comment while you're at it. You can follow us on social media at The Wolfpacker on Twitter. You can give me a follow at Justin H. Will on Twitter. NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com on Facebook. Head over to thewolfpacker.com. Take advantage of a special deal going on right now for $29.99. You can get premium subscription to thewolfpacker.com as part of the On3 network through the end of August 2023. So that's going to take you to the beginning of college football season. $29.99. It's normally about $10 a month for a premium subscription to thewolfpacker.com. So for 6 months, that's about a 50% savings. You're saving $30. If you're going to the game, parking's free, right, with your savings. So anyways, it's a good deal. And the deals have dwindled and dwindled as the Wolfpacker has blown up, and so has On3. So you better take advantage of this deal now. I'm serious, because there might not be another one down the road. We'll see. It's above our power. But anyways, head over to thewolfpacker.com. Take advantage of that subscription. $29.99 gets you through August 2023. Last but certainly not least, head over to rogueshop.com. That's ROGUE shop.com for your premium cannabis, CBD, Delta 8, and Delta 9 goods. They've got premium cannabis itself, cartridges, tinctures, oils, edibles, lotions, all kinds, whatever medium you can think of for cannabis ingestion, they have it. And head over to rogueshop.com. That's ROGUE shop.com. Proud sponsors of the Wolfpacker podcast, husband and wife, small business. They started this business. The husband is a disabled veteran that was turned on to these natural products when he dealt with symptoms such as stress and anxiety, trouble sleeping at night, pain and inflammation. Once he was turned on to these natural products, changed his life for the better, so much so that he wanted to make a livelihood out of it. And thus, rogueshop.com was created. And he's passing along to the good folks and listeners of the Wolfpacker podcast. So head over there now. You can support us by supporting them. Rogueshop.com. That's ROGUE shop.com. That's going to do it for this podcast. For Matt Carter, I'm Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker podcast.